Clean up wonderfully, don't we? Yeah, I get to introduce tonight your the Al-Anon speaker, and her name is Judy also. When I picked her up at the airport, I said now, and I've listened to her tape twice, and so I feel as if I know her in lots of ways, and I said, "What do you want me to say about you?" And she said, "Say that I'm pleased to be here." So this is Judy, all the way from Reno, Nevada.
Aloha.
Thank you. Hey, right color.
Smells so good.
Yes, it does. Hi, everyone. My name is Judy. I'm a grateful member of the Worldwide Fellowship of the Al-Anon Family Groups, which includes Alateen. Now I finally see what you look like. I was sitting down there and I thought, I wonder who's back there. I can hear you breathing. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to be here. What a lovely place, lovely people. I grew up in Minnesota, however. It's a little bit relaxed for me. This is the first time I've ever come to the podium without hose on. And I feel very naked, you know. I like your style. It just is taking me a little to get used to it. My home group is the Thursday Night Love and Laughter group in Reno, Nevada. So if you're coming my way, come our way. A lot of thanks, especially to Judy, for informing me about what was happening. Albert and Rachel, for the basket in my room. And it was the best basket I've ever had. It was everything practical. It was water, sunscreen, chips, Kleenex, and mango slices. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And a few cookies in the bottom. You know, everything I could use. So thank you so much. I like the theme, willingness is the key. And we were looking at those keys. Somebody put a lot of work in those keys. That's really impressive. And I also would like to thank our host and hostess last night for having the speakers and the committee to dinner. I am on the committee at home in my hometown, and it takes a lot of work to do these things. And then when you walk in the door, if you haven't had to work on it, it all looks so smooth. You know, it just happened. But it doesn't just happen. It really takes work and commitment. So thank you very much for the lovely dinner and for the welcome. I have just a certain amount of time to tell you my experience, strength from that, and my hope. Sometimes I call it experience, pain, and growth instead of experience, strength, and hope. A couple weeks ago, we had a surprise snowstorm, and my husband was gone, so it was up to me to get the paper. And I took the shovel out to the driveway to look for the paper before the neighbor came with his snowblower, because he comes and is helpful, and then it eats the snowblower and it costs him eats the paper and it costs him a fortune. So I'm out there trying to find my paper. And you know, I never did find the paper, but I cleared the whole driveway. And that to me is kind of like what happened to me in Al-Anon. I came to Al-Anon looking for something specific, looking for the answers to get someone sober. I never found those answers, but in coming here, I found my own life and a look at a whole new landscape to live life differently. So I did have tools like shovels and hammers, so it's kind of appropriate in that way as well. But today, thanks to Al-Anon, I'm an ordinary person living what I think is a very extraordinary life. And it's thanks to our literature, sponsorship, the slogans, the steps, and service. I think service, that third part of the triangle, has really been the key for me. My story seems to be long. I know in different parts of the country, especially in Alcoholics Anonymous, and you're the last people I need to thank. Thank you for having Al-Anon participate in your convention. That means a lot to me, and we are grateful to AA for letting us borrow your steps and this way of life. I came to Al-Anon in 1981, which makes me 27. You're an awfully serious group. In some parts of the country, I always hear people announce their sobriety date. And in Al-Anon, that isn't especially what happens because we don't know when we got sane. And we're still not sure if that has happened. So there is no date to announce. But I can tell you that I came to you in 1981. I was living in Iowa at the time. My husband and I had met in Wisconsin, and I married him. I say that because he was busy, and I wanted a ring, so I bought my own ring. I also bought the license because we needed one, and we got married in the judge's office in downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. It was not really a memorable day, but it happened. And I was glad of that. I thought I would die if I didn't have him, and then shortly after I got him, I thought I would die with him. And it's like the old, you hate sometimes to get what you pray for, because if you get it, it wasn't a good idea. So it's a good idea to pray for knowledge of God's will for me and let it go at that. And I'm not sure if that would have been God's will for me that day. Maybe it was. Maybe that's what got me here. But we moved to Iowa shortly thereafter, and it didn't take me long to know that I was in trouble. I was without friends, without family, and I was making a lot of long-distance calls back home, Wisconsin, to friends there, and I was troubled. I exhibited all those signs typical of the family member affected by the disease of alcoholism. Mostly, I was focused on two things, time and money. What was he doing with his time, and what was happening with all our money? Where was it going? We were two people who worked full-time with decent jobs, and yet we were broke. And then I was paying the bills and would have to rob Peter to pay Paul. So besides time and money, I began to be anxious and fearful. He wasn't coming home. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on. And I was frustrated. I just couldn't seem to get a handle on what it was. And I actually went to a counselor, and I explained all these things to him, about money and communication and mealtime, etc. And he was a blind counselor, which I think is ironic because he could see. He was legally blind. And he said to me, "I think your problem is alcohol." And I said, "Really?" I mean, that's so embarrassing. You'd think you'd know your problem when you go somewhere and somebody tells you it's something else. And he said, "I think you should talk to this woman." And he gave me a little slip of paper and wrote this woman's name on it. And I went home and called her, and I hated her. She'd been in our house. So I didn't ever call her again. I mean, I just let it go. But it did give me the idea that maybe alcohol was the problem. And in our Sunday paper, the bottom left side of the life section, once a month there was a list of meetings for Al-Anon and the phone number. And on the top of it, it said, "If you are concerned about someone's drinking, call this number." Well, I was concerned about it. So I read it every month. And I felt a certain comfort by reading it. Eventually, I did call, and I got this woman, and she said, "Come to my house, meet me there, and I'll take you to the meeting." So I drove over to her place, parked my car in the drive. I went up, knocked on the door. She came out, said, "Okay, let's go," and I turned around, and my car wasn't in the driveway. I had been so nervous. I was driving a stick shift, and my car was in neutral, and it had rolled right across the street and was in the neighbor's yard. And, I don't have much of a problem with that because our cars have parked a lot of strange places. So I just said, excuse me, I got to go get my car and I'll follow you. And we went to my first meeting. And that was November 17th, 1981. We went to St. Ludmilla's Church down in the basement. Al-Anon met in the kitchen and I sat by the oven. That's what I remember. I do remember that there was another room off to the side, and there was a whole lot of light over there and a whole lot of laughter. I could hear people laughing, and I wondered who was over there, and I thought it probably sounded like more fun. Well, today I realize maybe it sounds like more work. I don't know, but I do know who was in the other room, and I'm glad they were there. My host that night, she gave me a one day at a time daily reader. And she wrote in the cover, "We all love you, say the Serenity Prayer, Jeannie." And what I noticed was that the book cost $3.25. You know how we write inside the cover. And I thought, why would she spend $3.25 on me? It wasn't a happy place in that meeting. And what I remember was that I didn't like it. People looked old, like me tonight. And very sad, very, very sad. And I thought, okay, I'm young and newly married. If my life at this point is destined to go to a church basement and sit around and then go out and have pie at the Happy Chef restaurant afterwards, there's got to be something better than that. I took that book, a couple pamphlets. I know she gave me one called The Steps and Traditions, and that looked awfully tedious. It was kind of like a dictionary thing. And I went home, and we do not give advice in Al-Anon except in terms of spiritual principles. That's okay. But I went home and I said, I have been to Al-Anon. I must have had that look, a little self-righteous or something. And I remember it well because my spouse looked at me and said 3 words, "Count me out." Apparently, he knew what it was or something, and that was it. That really bothered me because I didn't want to rock the boat. I loved this man. I wanted us to be okay. And so I took the book and the pamphlets and I put them in the bottom drawer of the file in the back room. And I said to myself, it's not that bad. I thought it would get better. And 4 more years went by, not 4 good years. And we had taken a trip to Chicago in April. This is my birthday month. And when we came home, I made the decision to go back to the meeting. Because, you see, I had begun to measure how far we traveled, not by miles, but by drinks. And going to Chicago was a 12-pack trip. And that was just too much to be comfortable. And so this time I'd smartened up a little in 4 years, although I'd only been to 1 meeting, but I went to my boss and I said, I need to go to Al-Anon. I told him what it was. I asked him if he could rearrange my schedule so that perhaps I could attend the meeting during the day at noon. And he said, absolutely, we'll do what we can. And so I began to go to meetings at noon, leaving my work, hurrying down, and then coming back. And I did that for well over a year before I finally admitted that I was going to Al-Anon. You see, I just wasn't prepared to take the heat. I'm a coward. If somebody pushes back at me, I give. You know, I'm not willing to stand up at that point for what I believe in, and I wasn't. At that meeting, there was a woman who always stood by the door, and she was a tall, imposing woman. And I always knew that she wanted to hug me. And I was not into hugging. After all, I grew up in Minnesota and we're very reserved. I mean, when we drive out of the yard, we honk the car horn, and that means I love you. But that's as good as it gets. We don't say that stuff. We're not into, touching and all that. So, stoic. We have to be. It's cold up there. And in a lot of ways. So this woman is standing by the door, and I know she wants to hug me. She's very tall. She's very well endowed. And I am sure that if she hugs me, I am going to be crushed in the crease. And I know that if I try to get past her, she's going to turn to the side, and then I'm history. I mean, there's no way I can get past her. That woman became my sponsor. And she was my sponsor for a long time until she died just 2 years ago. And I slept on her couch. I rode in her car. What a gift to have a sponsor. You know, she was there ahead of me, and I looked for her, and she was everywhere. And she really had what I wanted. She was cheerful, happy. She pulled us in and said, you know, honey, get in the middle, get in the car. But when I went to the meeting, I still didn't want to be there. But I knew exactly that I belonged there because of my identification on that little 20-question list. And the first 3 questions: do you worry about how much someone drinks? Do you have money problems? Do you lie to cover up for what the alcoholic is doing? On those first 3, I discovered that I was a worried, broke liar. And then it just went downhill from there. I knew I was in the right place. And there were a lot of pamphlets on the table, and ones that really appealed to me, like, so you love an alcoholic. I mean, that is the popular pamphlet still. I watch those pamphlets when newcomers come in, and they always go to that one, because you see, it's always true. And it speaks. It speaks. You love an alcoholic. That's why you come to Al-Anon. And a guide for the family talked about my role. The merry-go-round named Denial. It talked about the family disease in 3 stages in a play. And when I read that, I realized that we were indeed in Act 3. And so it was serious business. And understanding ourselves in alcoholism. It talked about the obsession, but it talked about my obsession and my anxiety and my anger and my guilt. And all of those things were true about me. But a really great fact that pamphlet said in the top left corner was that the American Medical Association identifies alcoholism as an illness that can be arrested but never cured. And I thought, if it is good enough for the AMA to believe that, it's good enough for me. And I was happy to hear that, because I didn't know what I was dealing with. And somehow it made it respectable and it made it okay. It was an illness. And that pamphlet told me to forget what I think I know about alcoholism and learn the facts and start over. Go to open AA meetings. And I did that the first Wednesday of every month. I went to the meetings, and it was amazing to me. Whenever I was at the end of my rope, I would go, and then once again I would have some more patience and tolerance for what I thought was personal, but it wasn't personal. It was just alcoholism playing out what it played out. And so I learned so much, and I'm so grateful to my friends in Alcoholics Anonymous that kind of shaped me up and let me know that I had a lot of learning to really do. I took my One Day at a Time book back out of the bottom file drawer, and I began to read it. And it is still my favorite daily reader because it's the very basis of Al-Anon philosophy. Every page is just filled with good, solid Al-Anon tools, principles. And there was a page that came to me, and it said, basically, it's time to lay down your weapons and pick up your tools. Lay down the weapons of sarcasm, of whining, of nagging, the strident voice. Oh, it just described me. It was so disgusting. There I was in a little capsule right on that page. And then I had to pick up the tools of courtesy and kindness and compassion. So I had a lot of work to do, and I knew that. And that's the third thing. Besides identifying and getting educated, it gave me a plan of action. It told me what I could do to make things better in my home. And there's a little line actually in our alcoholism, the merry-go-round Dame Denial that says the family member may hold the key to recovery, that a family member can be of so much help. And that was just exciting to me. Not that it was easy, but it was exciting because there was something I could do. But I had to completely change my behavior, and that's not easy. I realized that I hadn't read a newspaper in years. I hadn't sat on our couch. I had a car with headlights that hadn't worked in well over a year, and my solution to that was simply to be home before dark. I never thought that that was a peculiar way to think. And I remember mentioning it about my car at a meeting, and somebody said, "You don't have headlights?" "No." "Well, keep coming back." You know, that's one of the first things I did when I got in the program. I took my car in and got the headlights fixed. I mean, that is powerful stuff. Why did I have to go to Al-Anon to learn that? It is a baffling illness, isn't it? Anyway, I jumped into Al-Anon, and I'm grateful for the little lady named Ruth who said, it'll get worse. It'll get worse. And she was right, but you see, that was a good tip, because I expected that it would get worse. And I began to go to meetings and try to work the program, and my sponsor was very helpful. She taught me some things real fast. She always called me honey. And she said, "Honey, it takes two to argue. If you stop arguing, there won't be an argument." I mean, again, amazing. And she said, "You don't always have to be right." I thought that was a noble cause, to be right. I mean, how can you just go around being wrong? I heard somebody the other day said half measures avail us nothing, and he said, shouldn't it avail us half? Yeah, you know. So here we are, we get nothing. It's good to be wrong, let it go. And I just couldn't imagine that sort of, I mean, what was I supposed to do? Nothing? And she said, "Yeah, that's a good idea. Do nothing. You've been going around causing trouble." And that was true. That was true. I was not very loving to my husband's friends. I called them lowlifes and scums. I didn't even know their names, especially. So when I began to get better, I had to practice, and I started calling them things like Mike and Tom. And if I really branched out, I said, "How are Bonnie and the kids?" You know, so I practiced those things because I was not a pretty person. I was just angry and resentful. There's a wonderful passage in our Discovering Choices book. It's about shoes, and I kind of like that because Lois W. was known to have thrown her shoe at Bill about, annoyed with his meetings. And the passage says simply this: trying to fix someone else's problem is like stepping uninvited into someone else's shoes. The shoes don't fit, they pinch, or they're too tight. As difficult as it is to walk in them, we remain determined to make them work. It doesn't occur to us to take the shoes off and look for a pair made specifically for us. And that's what Al-Anon has been about for me. It's been finding my own shoes and my own path. You see, that was amazing to me, that I could walk a path and that I did not have to monitor, fix someone else. Now, it's kind of scary to let go. So I remember my sponsor saying to me, "Honey, if you can't let go, can you hang on real loose?" And that was a good little tip, because most days I could hang on fairly loose, and I treasured those little gems that she shared with me. I had been in Al-Anon just over a year, and there's a page in our One Day at a Time book that talks about standing in other people's light and standing in your own light, and if you get out of other people's way, they can make their own decisions and God can intervene. My spouse chose to go to treatment, and I had nothing to do with that. just a year. And I've seen that happen so many times in Al-Anon. When we get busy, they get better, and get out of the way. I was very hopeful at that time. He went off to Minneapolis to a fine treatment center, and we had our anniversary that month. And it was a great anniversary because he was locked up and I was home. And I really enjoyed that. I knew right where he was, and, I knew he was safe, and everything was good. I participated in the family events, and people called us the lovebirds. And, I'm glad people don't kind of give you the vision of what might happen in the future, and you just do it one day at a time, because, I thought we'd be Mrs. Al-Anon and Mr. AA, and then we'd come to these dances, and, we'd be waltzing around off into the sunset, and it would be so romantic. And romance doesn't really have a lot to do with alcoholism, I've discovered sometimes. So, it was only 3 weeks after he returned home that we were out eating, and I saw that drink come. The waitress brought it. But I also knew from my friends in AA that it wasn't my business, and this could be common, and, butt out, basically. Ignore it. And I did. We just ate and went home. But what I have heard from upstanding members of Alcoholics Anonymous about that first drink is really true. What happened. And from that day forward, his life went in a different direction. But mine, because of where I was solidly in the program, I continued to go and to get better. I actually thought it was better when he was drinking, which is really a sick kind of thing, I think it's hard to witness somebody going backward when probably that person wants to go forward. And I don't know, but I just kept busy going to meetings, doing what I do. Now, one morning, I was getting ready for work, and I heard this rumbling noise out in our yard, and I went to my watch window and looked out. It was the north window of the kitchen, and we lived on kind of a hill, so it was a good vantage point. You could look out and see down the drive, and there was this transport truck driving up, backing up the hill, and chug, 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 making noise. So I go out there. There's this amazing-looking thing on the back of this truck, and the guy jumps out of his cab, and he's got his clipboard, and he says, "Well, where shall I put it?" Now, what was on the back of that truck was a World War II personnel carrier, the Army transport thing, the amphibious kind of vehicle that you see in war movies, when they stormed the beach at Normandy. It's big. It's 39 feet long and weighs 13 tons, I've discovered. I've done a little research on it. And he says to me, "Where shall I put it?" I had an idea. But my new Al-Anon behavior simply said, "I'm sure it's not ours." And he said, "Oh, we checked. Oh, yes, it is." He said, "Well, I'll just park it over here by the forsythia bush." And he did. He unrolled it, and off he went. Well, I went to work in disbelief, thinking, do we really own a duck? So I think that's one of the few nights that my spouse really came home on time, and he came in going, it's here, it came. He was thrilled, and I thought, oh my gosh, it is ours. He had been fishing up in Canada and had seen this thing parked over by a wood pile, abandoned, and he bought it and had it shipped down to Iowa. He was going to restore it to its natural beauty. Now, I don't know what kind of beauty he saw in the duck, but that was the deal. And, if you thought people were coming out to our house before, this was a hot item. There are not too many ducks in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We're living out in the country, and people are coming out to help restore this thing. And they're excited because there's a mission, and the goal was to have it running and beautiful in March in time for the St. Patrick's Day parade. In Cedar Rapids, that is a very big deal. Everybody goes down to Ted's Happy Time and gets ready. And then when the parade happens, and St. Patrick's was always a disastrous day. Something always went wrong. A car in the ditch or something, And so tension is mounting. People are coming out. There are guys that know how to do stainless steel work, and they've made these custom beer holders. They've welded them on the top, and they're so proud. They stand back and, doesn't that look good, And I'm at my watch window. I hate that duck. I have not touched it. I have not gone by it. I walk around the other side of the garage. I'm ignoring it as if no 39-foot metal thing was in the yard. Denial runs deep. So, anyway, about a week before the St. Patrick's Day Parade, my sponsor says to me, "Honey, your husband has worked very hard on that duck." And she said, "I think you should go to the parade. And I think I should get a new sponsor." Unbelievable. And she said, "Get off work early. Meet me down at the corner of Merchants National Bank." She said, "Be there at 10 to 1. The parade starts at 1. I did. I'm there. She's smiling. She thinks it's great fun. And it's a nice day. We're standing there, and Cedar Rapids goes from west to east and kind of comes up the hill, across the river. It's a lovely little town. And it's actually fashioned after Paris, France. It's the same design. The government buildings are out on the island. And I look to the west, and I can see General Patton coming, And she says to me, "Now, honey, when he gets here, you smile and wave." And so I went, and the duck went east. I could see the keg in the back. And it was a good moment because the driver was so startled to see me smiling and waving that he's driving east, looking back west, like, what is wrong with her? Has she lost her mind? And, I love that. It was like, wow, behaving differently really works. That night when I went home, I started thinking, you know what? I feel kind of good about myself. Because for a moment, which I could not have done by myself, I separated the person from alcoholism. And the duck did look like $1 million. It looked brand new. Now, I've never admitted that, but it did. It looked good. But I did the right thing. And for a moment out there, I was just like every other person in the world down at the parade, just waving and smiling and having a good time. And when my spouse came in the door that night, I was ready to go to my meeting. And he looked at me and he said, "You're going to the meeting, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, I am." He said, "I'm glad. I know it makes you feel good." And then he looked at me and he said simply, "Thanks for coming today. It meant a lot." And I looked at him and I said what I have learned to say in Al-Anon, "You're welcome." And off I went to my meeting. Now, I wouldn't say there was harmony in our house, but there was peace. And we had a light at the end of our driveway. And when I found out that my husband was ill, I started leaving that light on for him when he was out. And I would say to him, "I'll leave the love light on for you." And I always hoped that the love light would be on for me. But it never was. And I would look, and eventually, I don't know about you, but you look long enough and you kind of just give up hope. And I gave up hope about the love light. I didn't even look for it anymore. But not too long after the duck deal, I came up on top of the hill and I looked down the bottom of the driveway and I saw that golden glow at the bottom. And it was the love light. And it was on for me. And I knew that he knew I was at a meeting, so I knew it was intentional. And from that day forward, the love light was always on. And if the bulb was burned out, I was always told that it was burned out, but it would be replaced. So you see, changed attitudes can aid recovery on both our parts. It was like, okay, truce. And things didn't change with the drinking, and they progressed as alcoholism does. But I was okay, and I was good, and I felt comfortable with my life and my Al-Anon journey. Now, the one comfort that I found in the ODAT is on August 30th, because we had been at this deal a long time, and although my life felt serene and good, I didn't know, what do you do when things just keep on keeping on? But on August 30th, there's a great reading that says if you've come to the end of your rope, basically tie a knot, hang on, and redouble your efforts to work the Al-Anon program. And that's what I did. I started sponsoring an Alateen group. I started getting into service. I started going to more meetings and participating because I didn't know what else to do. I just went to another meeting. And it was time ticking by. 7 more years went by here. And I was invited to go to Oregon and speak. And it was a beautiful May weekend, and I was out there. And I went on the Rogue River, and I rode one of those airboats, and it was just beautiful. It was like here, and I'm thinking, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he drinks. My life is good, and I'm happy, and I know I'm loved, and it's all okay. And I came home, and I discovered that my belongings had been moved into the back room of our house. And I've learned in Al-Anon that if you don't know what to say, it's a good idea to say nothing at all, but just to wait. Because waiting is a conscious choice. Knowledge, when it's meant to you, will come with no effort on your part. That's from our ODAT, too. And I remembered that line, and I slept in the back room that night. And I woke up in the morning, and I thought about my own inventory, my own 4-step. Because in Al-Anon, it's real important that we look at our assets as well as our defects. In fact, we look at our assets first, and see what's there. And when I woke up that morning, I thought, okay, what does the higher power want from me? I've cleaned up my side of the street. I'm using the tools. I'm working my program. But there was a real important little piece that I had kind of glossed over. I kind of went from step 1, 2 to 4. See, I kind of ignored step 3. I turned myself into the meeting, but I didn't turn myself over to God as I understand Him. And I'm asking myself, what does God want from me? What am I supposed to be contributing? Is this it? And sort of a voice said to me, this isn't it. Alcohol has been your God, but it doesn't have to be. I picked up the newspaper that day, and Cedar Rapids has a whole section of ads, rental, etc. And I glanced through them, and I called one number out of that whole fat section. And when the person picked up on the other end of the phone, the voice said, "Judy, is that you?" God? It was my friend. My friend. I think about what are the odds of that happening. She said, we have a rental. She said, only for 6 months. You can move in if you want. She said, and this was what hooked me. She said, you can have a cat. Because I lived in the country, I had a dog and 3 cats, and I had been waiting for the pets to die. That's not a real logical reason. But it was my reason, and one of the cats was, on its last leg, and we were all getting old, all the pets and me. But she said, you can have a cat. I went to look at that apartment. It looked dingy and smoky and depressing, and I came back home and took a nap. But I remembered the cat, and I said to her, I will take it. And so on a lovely May morning, just a week after I had come back from that convention, I borrowed my boss's little pickup, and we broke the rear view mirror off the left side trying to move things. And I rented a truck, My sponsor came with the van. She took my clothes. Another friend came and she took a few of my plants. That day, I left my acre, my home, my cherry trees, my apples. I'd planted those trees. I'd watched them grow. But every spring I would go out, and once they'd blossom, then I'd stay. And that year I knew, don't walk the yard. You see, eventually knowledge comes to you and you get smarter. It just took me a long time. I didn't walk the yard because I knew this was probably the year. And I left home that noon, and I made it into my apartment, and I was at the district meeting by 7 o'clock that night because I had a job to do. And my life went forward from there, and it was good. I didn't worry that day when I left. I didn't leave with fear. I didn't leave with anger. I simply left with complete acceptance that I am turning this over, and I'm ready for the future. And I have a friend in Texas who says there'll come a time when the unknown will look better than the known. I never knew when that was, and I always wondered, and people said, you don't have to know because you'll know. And that day I knew, and I went off to my new life. I gave myself a divorce for Christmas, December 23rd. It wasn't on my list. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I needed to do for myself. You know, self-care. We talk about that in Al-Anon, and it's really hard because it's such an emotional thing. How do you separate yourself? And in Al-Anon, I have learned to live with that discomfort and choose to do what's best for me, even though it's really not what I want to do, because I know it's the right thing. And I couldn't have done that without deciding that step 3 and step 7 are really steps that I need to look at and be serious about. I didn't know how to pray to God. I didn't even like God. I thought God was a man. I just hadn't had good luck there. And I didn't understand why God would put me in that situation. So I had to get out our As We Understood book, and I had to look for a prayer. I had to start somewhere. And my favorite is on page 214. And there's just a little part that says, I cannot change my friends or loved ones, so I release them into your care, God, to do with as you will. Just keep me loving and free from judging them, and help me to be of service to you and to do my best. And I read that out loud every day. I read it until it became what I really felt in my heart. I was happy in my little apartment. I remember going back to that same meeting that I had been to in the very beginning, and the people looked much younger. They looked happier, and I was standing at my little basement apartment looking out at the moon, just thinking how good my life is and how much I have to be grateful for. Now, my sponsor called me one summer afternoon, late afternoon, and she said to me, honey, you always know something's coming when she said, honey, will you come to the hospital and stay with me? She said, Mother's dying, and we're trying to find my brother. He lives in Texas, and have him come here and take Mom off life support. Now, I didn't want to go to the hospital and stay overnight, but of course I did, because when I think of what she's done for me, here is something she finally asked me that I could do for her. So I went to the hospital that night. I stayed the night. I slept on the bench there, whatever it was. And in the morning, her brother did come from Texas. And he sat down next to me right on the couch, and he crunched right in there by me, and he turns to me and he goes, who are you? Who are you? How do you know my sister? And I wasn't sure if I should say that she's in Al-Anon and her husband's in AA. It was his family. And I said, well, ask your sister. And he did, apparently. And the room was filled that day. I remember it. You know, AA members and Al-Anon members, we're all there. We're all being supportive. And sure enough, the mother was taken off life support, and we all left the hospital. And I called my sponsor. I thought I would take some food over and That's what we do in Iowa. You know, you bring food. Don't know what to do, you just eat. And I think we still do. And she said to me, just a minute, my brother would like to speak with you. And I thought, what does he want? You know, I thought he's going to ask me to come over to the house and babysit the poodle while they go to the funeral home. And I hate that poodle. It's got bad breath and its ears are mangy and it licks your face. And I just hate that dog. And he gets on the phone and says, I was wondering if you'd like to go to dinner. I hadn't anticipated that. You know, I'm on the dog. And I said, well, like, what for? And he said, well, I'd like to get to know you better. And I thought that was kind of odd, but I have a social life now because I'm in Al-Anon. And I said, well, I can't go. I have plans. I'm going out for pizza with Stella and we're going to the meeting. And he was quiet and I thought, oh dear. I said, so I could probably do it tomorrow night. And he said, okay. And my sponsor got back on. She goes, oh, honey, thank you for taking him off my hands. He's just in the way here and he doesn't know what to do. And, you know, he's from out of town. And so I thought, well, I'm doing her a favor and it's a free meal. Those are the two things that I thought, you know, were right up there. And, we went out to dinner and he ordered a beer. And I looked at it and I thought, oh dear. And, but he said to me, I didn't know about my sister and her husband, you know, in AA and all this. And he said, you're in Al-Anon and I could really learn a lot from you. Well, I mean, I've never had anybody say that to me. And I walked him through the whole 12 steps over dinner. I started at the beginning and I noticed that he stopped drinking his beer. He didn't finish it ever. It just sat there. Well, it was a nice meal and I dropped him off and, he called in the next day or so, but I didn't answer the phone. He wanted me to go out for ice cream and I thought, oh, no way. That's too personal, you know, cause he had found out we go for ice cream and, I just ignored him and he went back to Texas. And then I started thinking, you know, about that was kind of rude. So I called my sponsor and I asked for his address and I thought I really owe him a little amends and a note of thanks because he did pay for the meal. And I wrote it out and I remember I put it in a drive-by mailbox and I was regretful that it was too nice when I dropped it in there. I wanted to get it back, but I sent it. And several days later I got a phone call the night of a meeting that was ending and it was him. And I thought, oh, he got my note. And I said, did you get my note? And he said, no. Did you get mine? And I said, no. Oh, thank God, you know. And he said, I was wondering if you'd come to Texas. And I said, well, what for? You know? And he said, well, to visit, you know. And I remember him asking me if I had any high heels. And I said, no, I don't have any high heels. I don't wear them in my job. Why would I need high heels? I thought, geez, that guy's weird. And then I thought, you know, I'm really not doing anything over Labor Day. I mean, I'm sitting here in my basement apartment. And he says, well, you know, if you want to come. I said, well, I would have to come now. I'm about to go back to work. He said, well, I'll split the ticket with you if you want to come. So I thought, what the heck? You know, Al-Anon has taught me keep an open mind. And so I got a ticket. The only problem was I didn't know how to tell my sponsor that I couldn't go shopping with her Saturday because I was going to visit her brother in Texas. I mean, she would not have understood that. And it was embarrassing to tell her, but I told her. And I found myself on the airplane kind of fidgeting around. And I'm thinking, you know, maybe I've carried this keep an open mind thing a little too far. But I do know his sister, and his family's respectable. I know his mother, and she cracks a mean whip, you know, so maybe, who knows, but there's a guy sitting on my left, and I must have dropped a slogan or something in our conversation. He was trying to strike up a conversation, and I wanted to ignore him, because I just wanted to be nervous by myself, you know, and you don't want any help on stuff like that. And finally he looks at me and he says, kind of turns, "Are you a friend of Bill W.?" And I said, "No, but I know his wife." And he was from Nebraska, and he was nice, big Stetson. And I thought, gee, why am I going to Texas, But we had a nice conversation, and he asked me about his wife. He was wondering how to get his wife to go to Al-Anon. I mean, amazing. I had never thought of that all my time in Al-Anon, that somebody in AA might wish that a spouse would join the program, and I'm going, well, good luck, And he goes, really? I go, yeah, forget about it, And we talked about that and had a good conversation, and I was getting nervous getting off the plane. He said, I'll tell you what, when I get over by baggage, he said, I'll take a look, and if I think he looks all right, he said, I'll check him out. And he said, if he looks all right, I'll tip my hat. And he gave me the Stetson tip. And off he went, into the sunset. And I visited Texas. And to shorten that story up, we had a long-distance relationship for well over a year, and then we were married. We were married in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I had nothing to do with it. I just enjoyed what I was doing, and here we are down the road. And I have a husband who said right before I came up here, he said, it's been a bonus to marry you. And how neat is that? I was not looking, I wasn't wanting, I wasn't hoping, I wasn't doing anything except taking care of my own business and working my program. And so I moved to Texas, which was a foreign country. I couldn't understand them. They were so slow. I mean, I could write my autobiography in the time that they said the Lord's Prayer at the end of the meeting. And then they would say at the end, does anyone have a burning desire? And I think, oh my God, I hope not. I mean, it's relaxed there. But life was good. I met friends. I just did what I know how to do. A lady gave me the intergroup number. She said, honey, you call and you get to Al-Anon as soon as you get to Houston. And I did that because I can take direction. And Al-Anon was the same there, except they were slower. Probably about half of the discussion that we got in Iowa, but it was still good, And after about 4 years, I got a job there. I didn't even want to search for a job, but I met a newcomer. I welcomed her at the meeting, and she asked me what I did, and I told her. And she said, I think we have an opening where I work. She said, let me check. She checked. I got a call. I went for an interview. The guy interviewing me says, what brought you to Texas? In the past, I would have spilled it all. But I simply said to him, well, it's kind of a cross between a miracle and a fairy tale. I guess I'll just leave it at that. And he kind of looks at me and goes, well, nobody's ever said anything like that to me before. And he didn't pursue it, and neither did I, and I got the job. That person that I welcomed, her husband was on the list for a liver transplant, and we were working right next to each other. And the day that her beeper went off, that Ed was to get a new liver, she came over and said, I got the call. Will you watch for me? And off she went, and I eventually became her sponsor. So, it's just amazing how things worked out. My spouse wanted to move west. He was tired of Houston, and, that wasn't a bad idea. I didn't want to really go to Reno because all I thought it would be gambling and hookers, and I'm trying to upgrade my life. But, once again, he said to me, anything you want if we go to Reno? And I said, yeah, I'd like to have a cat again and a wash machine with a gentle cycle. You see, now I know what I want. And he said, it's a deal. And off we went to Reno, and I looked again right away for a meeting I could find on the map. And I got to that meeting, and since I've been in Reno, my life has had a whole other dimension of recovery because it's been about giving back. It's been about service. And now you see I have headlights. I can go out at night. I'm not going to bed at 8 o'clock. I can go to meetings. I can be of service. And when the GR said in my group, which is my home group, Love and Laughter, she said, I always forget to go to those meetings. Does anybody want to go? And I said, I do. Because I knew if I got connected that I would meet other people and my life would grow. And so I became GR for that meeting after, well over a decade in Al-Anon. And I'd been around long enough to know what a GR should be doing, so I could enjoy it and do a good job. And then I went on to serve as DR and at the area level. And somebody asked me yesterday if I'd been to Stepping Stones. And yes, I have, because of service. I was privileged to serve as Nevada's delegate from 2008 to 10. In fact, I met the delegate that I served with last night. She was here. And my world has broadened and expanded abundantly beyond my wildest dreams. And what can I say? The steps helped me discover who I was. The traditions have helped me know and understand you. And the concepts have helped me practice what I know to be true. I think this is a very deep and spiritual program. My program today, I'm going to celebrate my birthday at my home group Thursday night, and it'll be 28 years of never ever taking a vacation, always being present. My program is vibrant, it's exciting, and I have new things to look forward to more than ever. Because there's less emotion in my life. I can actually hear what you're saying. When I look at you, I can see you. And that's a really wonderful gift, because for so long it was just churning between my ears. I am richly blessed with friends anywhere I go. My sister introduces me as my sister, the one with all the friends. And she's right, There's an old cliche we kind of hear around Al-Anon a lot. No is a complete sentence. Now that's true. But nobody ever says that about yes. Yes is a complete sentence. And when I said yes to the program, and when I said yes to taking the steps and applying them to the best of my ability to my life, and when I had the courage to be strong enough to stand up for a life of integrity and principles and something that is ethically and morally sound, my life just continued to get better. And I said yes to life. That's what it's really all about. It wasn't just yes to the program. And so I'm grateful. I'm happy to be here. And that was really true when I told Judy, because it's not about me, it's about us. And that was the theme of our conference this year, changing the I to we. And I am just happy to be a part of, to be with you. I don't need any extra attention. I don't need anything except to be welcomed and loved in the circle of our fellowship. And I thank you for inviting me here. Aloha. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.